Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
We're going to talk about DOGE, so it's going to be a fun conversation here today. So go ahead and, Lad, if you want to start us off, kind of fill in more about who you are, what you're here to do, and let's have some fun.
Sure, sounds good, Joe. Thanks for that intro there, and it's an honor to be on with Raw and Mindy and Boots. We'll try to make them proud today, and talk about some things that are on the minds of the American people. And Zach, the mold mentor Duffy, what do you got to say today?
Great to be here. I'm trusting you guys to lead the show today. Maybe I'm here to learn.
Yeah, good stuff. And I know, Zach, we were just talking about the growth you've had in your business, as of lately. Sounds like you've got more people coming to you than you can handle right now, and we're kind of facing a similar problem as well, which is always great. But obviously, we're not built to just not serve people that want our help, right? So we were just talking, before break about how we're scaling our business. So maybe talk about more of what that looks like for you and where you're going here with Mold Mentors.
Well, most of the people that come to me are people who just aren't feeling quite right, and they're not 100% certain why. And as Americans, I was reading a statistic that says we spend about 90% of our time indoors, which doesn't seem like the natural way to live, but 21 and a half hours inside. That's a lot of manufactured air, man-made air that we don't know what's in it because airborne particulates are microscopic. So we find whatever's in the air, and there's not a lot of people that I've been able to find that really care and will take the time to go through somebody in their home and offer up the different options and various laboratories where we can get analysis and interpret indoor air quality.
So finding professionals is a challenge.
Very much so.
Sure, like every business. Yep.
Yeah.
And so is most of your jobs then, is it people just like, hey, come check and see if I've got anything, or hey, I found something, I need to see what it is? Do you see both of that, or is it just more so when things come up?
We see both of that. Sometimes somebody will call and they say, hey, my doctor referred me to you. We did urine labs or blood labs, and we found that I'm extremely high in mycotoxins, which is a metabolite of mold. And so we need to know if it's coming from our home. Other times people see something dark in the basement corner and want to know if there's something bigger going on there.
That's awesome. That's good stuff. And Vlad, you're obviously got the the show here that we're going to talk about a lot of stuff that you talk about on your YouTube channel every day. What got you into that? Because you just kind of do that on the side, and that's kind of a project for you just enjoy doing, right?
Yeah. So it's called the Stand and Speak Show on YouTube, and you can follow us on X at Lad Dilgard, LADDILGARD. And it is kind of a hobby of mine, politics, economics, and history. And I don't really fish or hunt or golf that much. So I thought, this is a hobby that I like doing. I like reading about it. So it's an online news magazine. We've been dormant for 2 weeks because I've been in the South Pacific on an anniversary cruise with my lovely wife down to French Polynesia. So we're firing up the machine this week. Again, we're going to talk about tariffs and some of the things that we talk about on this show. But it is a hobby, and the Stand and Speak Show, we'd love for you to come out and subscribe for free and check us out and comment on it.
That's awesome. And while they're at YouTube there, they can also look up us, Peak Retirement Planning. We've got a YouTube channel as well, and I actually was checking out yours, Vlad, and I love all the edits and the thumbnails. And people don't understand there's a lot of work that gets put into YouTube, and it's to make it more aesthetically pleasing, so people are more engaged and more interested in it. But especially when you have a good topic to talk about, you always want to make it as pleasing as possible for people to watch and enjoy. So that's awesome.
I appreciate that. My partner Eric Coey, he does some incredible edits.
Is that what he does it all?
He takes the raw stuff and puts it together into a beautiful package.
Yeah, I always tell people whenever they look us up on YouTube, I say just be aware you're gonna laugh at some of the thumbnails is what they're called. So the thumbnails are basically like a picture of you to get people to click on the video, and it's me doing like silly poses or anything, and I don't handle any of that. We have an editor that does all of that, and he just makes me look goofy, but it works. It gets people to watch it, and as long as we're helping people with it, then that makes it fun and enjoyable there. So good stuff. So I know today we've got quite a bit on the agenda here. We're going to obviously talk about the State of the Union, and we can kind of just start there of just what's your thoughts off the top of your head. I mean, we're going to get into a lot of the details of what was talked about there, but thoughts.
Yeah. So I was watching this on the cruise ship, and I was getting a lot of text messages, and a couple things come to mind. Trump's voters were ecstatic. They were deliriously happy with his performance. And there was a poll by CBS that said 76% approved of his performance, 74% thought Trump was presidential or entertaining, 73% liked his plans, and so on. So he was awesome.
Yeah.
He was at what we voted for. On the flip side, Democrats, we can go into this in more detail if you'd like, but they made fools of themselves.
Yeah.
They kind of behaved childish, putting up the ping pong paddles, storming out. The one guy, Al Green, he was waving his cane and screaming and, got removed and so on. They're increasingly looking like a second tier or maybe like a third world type of political party. It doesn't bode well for their future. And so I thought in terms of an address to Congress, it's not an official State of the Union, but it went off perfectly.
Yeah.
It was really impressive.
For sure. Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it went really well. I think we were able to see the fire and passion that Trump has and what we're trying to do. Like it felt comforting, and I think most people felt encouraged by what we heard. And I do have a hot take on all that, and we'll talk about it when we come back from break here. But I do think that what the Democrats did was ridiculous. But I also don't think Trump makes it the easiest to follow behind with how arrogant he can be. So I'd like to talk about that when we come back from break here. So stay tuned here. It's Joe Schmitz. All righty, here we're back for more talking State of the Union, the disrespect of the Democrats here. Lad's got a pretty strong opinion here, and he's going to go all in, so we're just going to let him run here. But pretty interesting perspective, and I would say I agree with everything he's saying. I'm going to challenge him afterwards, and we'll see how he can respond to see where he can go.
No one's going to argue with you about me having strong opinions.
And I agree. But we're just talking about the fact of how Trump can come off as arrogant, and Lad made a good point. Well, that's what we signed up for, and that's absolutely true. But Lad, I'd love for you to just talk more about why is it okay for him to be that arrogant? And I believe too, like as a leader, you need to have some arrogance to you. You have to have some confidence and some conviction in what you believe in and what you're doing. So touch on that further, Lad.
Yeah. So the voters and the viewers of that address to Congress are getting what they voted for. They've known Trump in the public politics sphere for over 10 years, and there's nothing that's a surprise to them. So just a couple of stats here. Trump's job approval in this last week, Trafalgar has him up by 5 points. It's +5 in positive territory. Rasmussen +2, Daily Mail +8. People like what they're seeing here. A couple of other things in the specific speech. 68% thought Trump described crime accurately, and another 10% says it's even worse than what he said. So 78% think that crime is bad and needs addressed. So Trump gave what he's been voted in to do. And then on the flip side, we talked about Democrats making fools of themselves. Even Democrats are saying this. John Fetterman said that he is so tired of the self-owns and the major mistakes by Democrats. This is a Democrat senator from Pennsylvania saying this. Bill Maher was embarrassed about them. These Democrats, they didn't clap for anything, not even a kid with cancer, not a hostage that was brought home. And if you're reading on X and Facebook and some other places, Democrat voters in many respects have reached a breaking point and said, you know what, I'm not going to support Democrats anymore. What I saw in that address, I'm just not going to put up with it anymore. You've got this Al Green guy who's been censored by by Congress for waving a cane and yelling in the middle of the Trump speech. You have them not standing or giving any respect to the chief executive at all. So this whole speech came down to a wildly popular win for Trump, and then it exposed Democrats as kind of a third world or really a second rate type of political party.
And obviously, got to believe in accountability, right? And when something's not getting the job done, you got to make sure it's called out and it's held accountable for. And I think that's a lot of what he's doing there. My challenge can be, and obviously wanting to have extreme respect in all areas, and I get it that both parties, and I think Lad would say it's more so on the Democrat side. Would you agree with that, Lad?
I would definitely agree with that. And
but
I would never support a Republican. And there were Republicans who were yelling out in when Biden was giving speeches, and I didn't like that either.
But they're just certainly it's just polarized right now. We're just not connected, and we can point fingers and say it's their fault, but at the end of the day, it's like, what do we need to do to get to where we need to be so that everyone's on the same page and we're all rowing the boat together? That's where I think the biggest challenge lies right now with our country. You got to love all the policies that Trump's putting in place. You got to love all the areas that they're finding with DOGE and with all the things to make things more efficient. But how do we come together?
So two big things come to mind there. Democrats are 100% aligned against finding government waste and inefficiencies and fraud. How can you work together and row the boat in the same direction when you have a team, the Trump administration team, who's finding egregious amounts of waste with DOGE, and the public is wildly behind finding that, but Democrats are rioting and fighting it and filing lawsuits? I don't see anything consistent there. And that's the first thing that comes to mind. And the second thing that comes to mind is kind of a mental illness among the Democratic Party when it comes to things like transgenderism or boys playing in girls' sports. There is a I might get it wrong, but there is a bill last week that the Democrats shot down that would keep boys and men out of girls' sports. All 45 Democrat senators kept it from moving forward. I don't understand that. I think the American people are 80% against what the Democrats stood for there. So to me, the extreme party right now is clearly the Democrats on several different policy issues. I don't know how you row the boat in the same direction with that.
Yeah. And look, that's why, I guess the only thing we can do is to take action and run for office. So maybe we can do that next time around, right, and try to make a bigger difference. But no, I'm joking there. But anyways, he talked about the women and men's sport, or men and women's sports. And I thought we were just talking about how good of a speaker Trump is. And I loved how he brought people into the State of the Union conversation to just really, hey, here's the story, here's what's bad happening, and here's someone who lived it. I mean, it's just emotionally attaching in that. It just hits harder. And so I think he's just an incredible speaker. He also speaks with a ton of conviction. But I know he brought in someone, I can't remember the exact story, but I believe she had gotten hit by a volleyball, and I can't remember the exact scenario.
She had brain damage from a volleyball spike from a man who was playing a women's game.
Yeah, and so it's like, when is that ever, do we have to really bring up those examples to understand it's not acceptable? Obviously it's not meant to be, right? If you remember growing up in school, it's male and it's female. That's all it was.
You would think, yeah.
So, but yeah, anyways, I don't know if you had any other thoughts on that point in itself, but I know when we come back from break here, we're going to be talking more about, especially like just DOGE in general. We're going to be talking about some tariffs and taxes as well, and just how all that plays together and how that hopefully is going to help the consumer as time goes there. But anything else you guys want to talk about before we hit on break here?
I think I've laid it out.
All right, good stuff. Well, this is Joe Schmitz. We got Zach Duffy, Lad Dilgard here, and we're filling in for Boots and Mendy today. And this is Raw with Mendy and Boots, and protected by the undefeated American-made Tattletale, and never broken and undefeated. And we're from Heartland Bank Studios on News Radio 610 WTVN. All right, no Mindy and Boots. I think they may be calling in here soon. I know that Cammie has a softball game. I think both of them are going to be at, actually. They're playing Oakland here at 3 p.m., and they actually have some games here at Ohio State this weekend, so looks like some good weather here for this game here today. But they played Oakland actually on Friday. They beat them 10-2, so hopefully that repeats itself here. But they've also played Kent State and Marymount too. It's 17-1 and 11-1 there. So playing good ball here. They're 16-4-1, and so Cammie's senior year. So I know that Mindy's extremely excited about that. So Joe Schmitz here, Ladd Dilgard, and Zach Duffy here. We're going to be talking now about DOGE, but also just the fact, we were just talking. It's like, Zach and I run small businesses, and so it's like, whenever we look to make decisions for our businesses, we have to be extremely efficient with the money we spend. We don't have trillions of dollars in our budgets to be able to make decisions. And, we're just talking about when we run our businesses, why can't the government run their business like a small business, right, with that extreme efficiency? So, Zach, I didn't know if you had any other thoughts on that you wanted to add from the conversation we were having there.
The word tracking comes to mind for me because we're in the process of setting up and polishing off our tracking systems. What we don't track, we cannot improve. And so if we're being wasteful as a small business, that can be hurtful really fast, and it'll drive a small business to either close its doors or to have to pass that extra cost on to its customers.
Yeah, or you just make less profit and can't grow as much, right? And I always use a saying, and Ladd, you can talk on this more, but what gets measured gets managed, right? And you're saying that's one of the problems that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. And key performance indicators, or KPIs, is a great way to say this. And we were talking in the studio right before this about why this happens. And DOGE is tracking to $108 billion of identified savings. The national debt clock tracks it at $180 billion of all-time savings that they've identified. And I just want to hit you with a few examples on that. So one thing that DOGE did was they canceled 748 leases of vacant and underutilized buildings. So you think about that. That's $270 million in savings to the taxpayer every single year. The General Services Administration owns or leases another 188 vacant buildings and 96 buildings that are at least 50% vacant. So the people who are running these agencies prior to the Trump administration, whether it's a department manager or a cabinet member, they didn't bother, they didn't care to look at these things that were a waste to taxpayers. They just didn't want to do the work, to get rid of these buildings. One other good example is they canceled 114,000 unused software licenses and 15 underused or redundant software applications for a savings of $10 million a year. That might not sound like much, but you think about it. When you're a business, you buy software sometimes to do a thing. Maybe you use it for a while, maybe you never use it, but you buy additional software to replace it, or it becomes redundant. And if you're a business owner, you run out and you cancel that software subscription. You get rid of it because you don't want to keep paying the auto renewal. Mm-hmm. Well, nobody in government's doing that.
Exactly.
They're not. Nobody's picking up the phone and calling the software company to cancel it.
Yeah, I think too, it's like, why can't we also, I want to see an itemized receipt of everything that our tax-paying dollars go towards, right? If I'm here's the thing is I can complain about the government, but it's no, I'm paying money to them. It should be the right management, right? So that's what bothers me is I don't know where my money's being used.
Yeah, DOGE is trying to find that out.
Exactly.
And they're met with massive resistance in the courts, with the Democrat Party, with unions. People are trying to keep you from finding out that itemized receipt of spend. And what's that tell you?
Yeah.
They don't want you to know. And we've uncovered enough. We've got $28 million for funding a DEI scholarship program in Burma. We've got $41 million for a gender equality and women's empowerment hub, $373 million.
These are all things you believe in, right? You love senior money going there?
You know, even if I
crazy.
did, I wouldn't be sending it to Burma.
It's crazy. It's just like, man, that's like, it's just, it doesn't make sense at all. And, you know, I always say, like, you know, I'll pay my fair share of taxes. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I did write a book called I Hate Taxes, but I hate the concept that I don't believe the government's the best steward of all of our tax-paying dollars. Don't get me wrong. There's some stuff that I agree with. I think is great. We need some roads to drive on. But I'll use an example with the libraries here in Columbus. I mean, I use the libraries, you know, quite often. We do workshops in the community at the libraries, and they're very nice. But do they have to be that nice? Do we have to put that much money towards them? I mean, I know there's a lot of studies that can go in and prove me wrong on that, but, you know, if I'm going to design a library, I'm probably not going to spend that much money. I'm probably going to take that money and put it elsewhere. But obviously, you know, that's the trust that we have, and are we truly getting the right result from what we're expecting there?
At least you can see something substantive with your library
not
dollars.
As bad as what we're talking
there's
about,
a
right?
building, there's books, there's computers.
Yeah.
But paying for a vacant building.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, that or paying for something overseas that doesn't benefit the U.S. taxpayer, right?
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, it's pretty interesting. And the debt clock thing that you mentioned there, Lad, they can actually look that up online. I think it's, usdebtclock.com or something like that?
.org, I believe. Yeah.
And they can literally see it's a revolving number. It's one of my favorite web pages out there, and it will show you the debt revolving every second and just going up and up and up. And I've probably gone on there 1,000 times, and I've never seen that go down. And I think that's a huge challenge we have right now too.
Hey, Lad, what do you think about Big Walnut DOGE forming our own
Big Walnut School District?
Yes. So I serve on the Big Walnut Board of Education, and I think that after my first year, which was 2024, I'm becoming aware of some wasteful spending, and even shame on me for maybe voting to approve something that was somewhat wasteful, but I'm learning.
I understand that there's a movement among a few state legislators for an Ohio-based DOGE, and I've sent some suggestions to them on places to look. But there's a lot of waste and fraud in Ohio government.
Oh yeah, I mean anywhere. I mean, and it's like I can even say in my business personally, there's waste there. You just got to manage it, right? Like we're talking about, you got to look at it, and you got to look. I mean, one of the best advice I've gotten from a business standpoint is you should be auditing your business every week. You should take 1 to 3 hours and just take a step back from your business and what is going on, and this is the direction we should go. That's what we're doing right now with DOGE, and it's going to bring great results, and it already has. So it's exciting.
It is exciting, and they're following a pretty standard audit process like you would with a business. They're looking at where we spend money, they're looking at open contracts, and then they're looking at what do people do on a day-to-day basis.
Exactly. So coming back from break here, we're going to be talking more about tariffs and taxes and DEI. We're going to have some interesting conversations in there. And then, of course, we're going to add in some mold and how we can talk about some mold. And Zach's going to have quite a bit to teach us there. So Joe Schmitz, Lad Dogard, Zach Duffy filling in here for We're All with Midian Boots, protected by the undefeated, American-made, never beat Tattletale Alarm Systems from Heartland Bank Studio on News Radio 610 WTVN. We'll catch you on the break. We're going to be talking tariffs on this one. We're going to be talking about, this segment here, we're going to be talking about what we're seeing here and, what kind of our take is. And I'll kind of start with my take on the tariffs. I do think there's going to be some short-term impact for sure. I think costs are going to go up. I don't think it's going to be anything significant. There's studies out there that Lad will disagree with, and he can explain why. But, they show that most expenses for most people will go up about $2,000 to $3,000 a year. Here, as we're dealing with that 25% increase that's likely to happen for Mexico and Canada that Trump's implementing there. So, I think overall, though, tariffs, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good thing to implement for a long-term gain. And I think we're as human beings, we're always thinking instant gratification. We always want things right away, but that's just not realistic all the time, especially when we have to overcome what we're overcoming. And I think it's going to help us provide more jobs. I think it's going to help lower costs eventually once we can start to have more control. And I think it's going to set the tone for other countries too to understand that here's who we are as a U.S. and do you want to play ball or not? And so that's kind of my take. But I'm happy to hear your thoughts of what your thoughts are on tariffs overall.
Yeah, I am taking a wait and see approach on the impacts of Trump's tariffs, or where they all fall out, because they change so often. So Trump he's got a two-pronged approach here to tariffs. He's using them, A, as a foreign policy tool to get things done that he thinks needs done.
Exactly.
So now he's threatening tariffs on Russia if they don't end the Ukraine war. That sounds like a good idea to me. And now the Russian market with trade with the U.S. is not huge, but it's a tool in his toolbox to get things done. And he's also, that, like you alluded to, Joe, it's a tool to encourage more fair trade with our trading partners. Now, if we're selling a Ford overseas to Europe and they slap 100% tariff on it, and we're buying a Mercedes over here, and these aren't exact numbers, but there is an imbalance. We're buying a Mercedes here for 0 tariffs. That's a problem. And there's clearly thousands of trade imbalances like that that Trump is trying to rectify. So it's foreign policy tool, and then it's a push towards more fair trade. He's trying to protect our producers and our employers here, and not allow access to our market unless they allow our access to theirs.
Yeah, and the market definitely took a negative impact last week. It went down 3% on Monday specifically. It was down almost 3% there too, and that's from people basically responding from their expectations that prices are going to rise, and so obviously a negative there. And it's kind of to be. The market's been on an uproar here this year, which is kind of unexpected because the last 2 years we've seen 20+% returns each year, and we just feel like the market's a little overvalued right now, and so it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays apart for the rest of the year to see if the market's going to maintain. And I know Vanguard did a 10-year projection just based on what we're seeing. And they say that the equity stock market is only going to do about 3 to 5% over the next 10 years, which is extremely low compared to historical averages. I mean, historical averages are 7 to 10% for the market over time. And most of that's due to the fact that we're, considered overvalued right now. But obviously that's just a projection. Anything can happen. And we were just talking too, with Trump's policies, like we can't expect, egg prices to go down tomorrow. It takes time to implement things, and especially when you are coming across, after a Democratic president with Republican, and president trying to change a lot of the policies, it's going to take some time. You got to correct the stuff first. We were talking, Zach, about just business in general, right? You got to. What were we talking about when you're looking to scale? You got to kind of take a step back before you do so to make sure everything's in place, right? And I think that's what we're seeing right now. So
yeah, in order to build, on anything economically, we have to look at the infrastructure beneath that. How is it supported? Who's responsible? Who's accountable? How are we tracking? What are we tracking? Everything can be tracked. We can make up stuff to track. It should be fun. Not secretive, right?
Yeah, I think that's a step back that we should be thinking. Like, we should all be excited about the way we're going. We should all be excited about living in the U.S. and the opportunities we have here, right? And I don't think any of us here are saying that we're not. But how do we get there to the best of our abilities?
I just find it funny, I got to say this, that the people that are screaming about egg prices and avocado prices and tariffs driving up prices,
they don't even need them.
Well, they're the ones who passed trillion-dollar spending bills that blew inflation wide open to the worst it's been in 40 years. Yeah. We had 9% inflation in 2022, and it's still...
And that was just a reported inflation, but it could be even worse, right?
But it's still worse than the Federal Reserve target. I think the last inflation was about 3%, which is 50% higher than the Fed's target. Where were these people 4 years ago? That are complaining about avocado prices. Now they care.
And most people just want to find something to complain about, right? Nothing's ever going to be perfect for anyone. We're always going to find stuff to complain about and always gossip about, and it's never perfect. And as soon as it is perfect, you find more to complain about. So, but on the next segment here, we're going to be talking more about just taxes in general. We're going to talk about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We're going to talk about the likelihood for that to get extended here. Talk about the history of taxes and really just kind of set the stage of what things will look like. And obviously, we're not just going to look at federal taxes. We're going to be looking at state, property, local, and how all that plays a part, and to your plan as you move forward here. So with that being said, this is Joe Schmitz, Ladd Dilgard, and Zach Duffy here with Raw with Mindy and Boots, protected by the undefeated, American-made, never been beaten Tattletale Alarm Systems from Heartland Bank Studio on News Radio 610 WTVN. Catch you on the next break. So here's my question for you two here today. Have you ever met someone who has tipped the government? So they've paid their taxes for the year, and then decided to tip them and give them more. Have you ever met someone that's done that?
No, I don't think I have.
Not on purpose.
Yeah, not on purpose. Maybe we didn't take advantage of the opportunities. But I always say that because no one's intention is to ever pay more in taxes. If we ever talk to anyone, it's how do we pay less in taxes? And that's what we're going to talk about on this segment is we're going to talk about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So, and then we're going to talk about the history of taxes, and we're going to be just talking about some of the opportunities out there that you need to be aware of to make sure you are saving money on taxes. And this is a topic that we do every day with our clients at Peak Retirement. Tax planning is one of the biggest focuses that we do. I actually wrote a book called I Hate Taxes. It was a Amazon bestseller, and this Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is a big part of what's going on right now. So in 2017, President Trump, when he got in, he basically had a plan from 2017 to 2026. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act would be in place, which lower taxes for everyone by 20% in most cases. And the whole buzz right now is, well, 2026 is fastly approaching, and that's when the tax cuts will sunset and go back to what they were in 2017. And he's pushing hard. I mean, it seems like if I had to take my vote right now, I would think it's going to get extended. And it could get extended for a period of time, which would be very helpful for a lot of those people we work with who have been diligent savers, who are in or near retirement, because it could allow them to really take advantage of the lower rates early in their retirement, before they go up likely in the future is what most people are expecting there. And so with a Republican House, Republican Congress, Republican President, probably a good chance it's going to get extended is what we're expecting there. So, again, for most Americans, that would be a 20% increase in their taxes if their income stays the same as what our projections show there. So happy to hear what your thoughts are on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and where we're going from here.
I think it was critical to the roaring Trump economy that we had right up until February 2020 when COVID hit. According to the New York Times, you pretty much got a tax cut regardless of what Democrats were saying now and back then, which is, this was a giveaway to the billionaires and giveaway to the rich and all of this. That was total garbage. Anybody that was paying taxes, especially those on the lower end, got a tax cut, and it was very beneficial to the economy. One thing that has kind of surprised me this time around is Trump seems to be willing to let go of the SALT taxes, the limitation, the state and local tax, which I think set a $10,000 limit to the amount of SALT taxes that you can write off. Yeah. I think that the original was a great idea because it restrained states like New York and California. They had to go to their own taxpayers and say, hey, you know what, because we are so wacky on how much we spend as a state, you're going to have to pay more in taxes and you're not going to get any benefits from the federal government. So I hope Trump backs off of that. I hope they keep that limitation in there. I think it's the right thing to do. And then the other thing I'll say on taxes is I don't know how the no taxes on tips and the no taxes on Social Security and some of the other campaign promises are going to factor into all of this.
Overtime. I think
and
some
overtime
of it.
too.
Yeah, I think some of it, honestly, I think I could see it getting passed. I mean, they're still talking about it. It's not going away. I mean, I could still see it likely getting passed. But when you look at the numbers, especially Social Security one, to me, it's like it makes zero sense to give Social Security tax free. I mean, if you look at Social Security, the system is so flawed. I mean, it's expected to run out in 2033, which doesn't mean everyone won't get Social Security. It just means that, they won't be able to fulfill all the payments. So like 80% of Social Security would be paid. Everyone would get a reduction is kind of what that would look like, or they would change the retirement age. So many differences they can make there to keep Social Security going. But if you take away tax revenue that comes in from Social Security, it's probably not going to work. But you could also look at it on the flip side, too. If we aren't paying taxes on our Social Security, who's that going to impact? Well, it's mostly going to impact the middle class, because Social Security is only taxed to typically the middle class and in people with wealth. And so, that could lead to more, fuel to our economy, more spending, more revenue coming in there. So you can look at it both ways. You can argue it both ways, but I think the Social Security one's going to be a hard one to pass. And Social Security they just don't love to change. They haven't made a ton of changes, and that's what we call a stealth tax, is when things don't change. And so 1985, some of the numbers to calculate your Social Security taxation haven't changed since 1985, and that should with inflation. And so a lot of people are finding themselves paying taxes on Social Security now that maybe wouldn't have in 1985, for example, because the numbers are different. So lots of things to be aware of there. And Lott, I know you mentioned something before, and this is something I don't think a lot of people understand. 50% of people pay no federal income taxes.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. And I think it's unfortunate, too, because a large amount of those 50% don't care what happens, and they don't care about anything, about who's in office or anything like that. So you were mentioning that the top 1%, they pay 29, I don't know if it's 29 or 40% of all tax revenues come from the very top. We have a very progressive system. Yeah. And I think more people should have skin in the game, frankly.
And it's not like they're paying a couple dollars. Like the tax rate right now goes up to 37%. I mean, if you make $100 over a certain point, you have to give 37 of that away. And if we talk about the history of taxes, that was as high as 94% after World War II. And so you make $100 over a point, you only keep $6. I mean, Ronald Reagan was a filmmaker during that time. He'd make 2 movies a year, and that's it. I mean,
I remember that.
You're not even making any money at that point, right? I mean, you're just simply working for the government.
So we are talking about federal income taxes, but property taxes are way up. So there's still state income taxes, which are brutal. There's a lot of people wanting to end income taxes in Ohio, like they have in Tennessee and Texas and Florida. There's sales tax. There's sometimes a death tax. Federal income taxes are relatively low compared to what they have been in the past, but the number of taxes that we pay is massive.
And some people think, too, we get this question a lot with the clients we work with, because most of our clients are in or near retirement, of, hey, I'm going to go live somewhere else in retirement. Where should I go to pay the lowest cost there? It depends, because even though Tennessee and Florida is no income tax, well, I bet you're paying more in property or sales taxes, right? Yeah. So I actually wrote a chapter about this in my book about the impact of state taxes, because we work with clients all across the country, and so we have to be very aware of how everything operates. But nothing's free.
Yeah, that's
they have to get their revenue somewhere. So I think that's very important. But also, like the standard deduction, to your point, Lad, about the 50% of people who are not, they're not simply paying taxes. So if you're a married couple with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and again, if this expires, this will not be the case, $30,000 is the standard deduction. That means that if you have $29,000 or $30,000 of income and that is it, you pay no taxes. And if you're receiving Social Security, you could also, let's say, have $20,000 of income. You could have your $30,000 Social Security. You could still potentially pay no in taxes, because Social Security could be tax-free if you keep your income low enough there. So, it's just something, to keep in mind there, is that higher taxes typically, impact those who have been diligent savers. And I just wrote a book that actually just released on Thursday, another one called Midwestern Millionaire. And that's the people in my mind that are really going to be impacted here. Yeah, the rich are always going to be impacted. They're always going to have to pay more in taxes. But the middle class people, those hardworking people, the blue collar people, they've been diligent. They've done everything they're supposed to do all these years. And now they get to a point in retirement where all they saved is their 401ks, tax deferred. When they take out money, they got to pay taxes. If they do that, now that forces their Social Security to become taxable, well, they're going to end up probably paying the same amount of taxes, if not more, in retirement than they were in their working years. And they have no job. They have no income coming in. And so I think that's something that, the good news about all that is if you start planning now, do things like Roth conversions or tax efficient income planning, you can get ahead of it for those people who are in or near retirement. But, how many people are actually doing that and aware of that before the time hits them?
I would just like to add to that, if you have some savings and if you own a business, you got to talk to a guy like you.
Yeah.
You got to see somebody from Peak Retirement. And then the other thing is that a good tax professional, CPA or tax lawyer, has saved me a lot of trouble over the years. I think it's really important to go to professionals on this.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right? And we always tell people, regardless if it's us or someone else, make sure you understand who you're working with. CPAs and financial planners are two different creatures. Right? One, CPAs, they do tax prep. They only prep your taxes. They're not going to talk about strategies like we were talking about on break, like the Augusta rule and all of that. They're not going to talk about Roth conversions. You're going to need to work with a financial planner who specializes in tax planning, but understand, not all financial planners specialize in tax planning. Many financial advisors only do investment management. They're only worried about wealth accumulation. They're not worried about the distribution phase in retirement, or how do you protect and preserve what you've saved. And so, like at our firm, we feel it's so valuable to have everything in one place. So we have the CPA in place. We have the financial planners in place. We do all of the tax planning, and so that ensures nothing's missed. We have the estate planning attorney there as well, just to really make sure that nothing's missed there. So whenever we're telling people to work with a team, make sure they're working with a comprehensive team. If they're really really trying to do it the right way. Because if not, there's probably just going to be things that get missed, or you're going to have to go to 2 or 3 different people to get the right answers. So that would be something that I would highly encourage for those looking for help. And if someone wants a start of where to look, they can go to our website, peakretirementplanning.com, and they can request my book, I Hate Taxes, and get a good understanding of how that all works for them there. So that's all we've got on this segment, though. This is Joe Schmitz, Lad Dogard, Zach Duffy, with Midian Boots, protected by the undefeated, American-made, never-been-beaten Tattletale alarm systems from Heartland Bank Studios on News Radio 610 WTVN. All right, here we are. Last segment here. So fun stuff. We just talked about some mold. We talked about the State of the Union, tariffs, taxes. What else we talked about? DEI. Fun time.
All my favorite topics.
So where can people find us if they want to extend? I know, Lad, you talk about a lot of this stuff on your YouTube channel. Where can they find you there and listen in more?
YouTube Stand and Speak Show. Come out and find us. Subscribe for free. We love it when you comment. Mm-hmm. There's going to be some new content fired up this week. We'd love you to join us out there. They
got to like all the videos, subscribe, comments. All that helps the algorithm so that more people can find the content. Is something we always talk about there too. And I think that's so important. So, Zach, where can they find you here?
MoldMentorOhio.com.
And what's did anyone take advantage of the free?
I don't know yet, but let's repeat that. So the first person to submit an online inquiry through MoldMentorOhio.com will be entitled to a free inspection with mold testing by yours truly, Zach Duffy. MoldMentorOhio.com. And I want to thank Lad with Stand and Speak for offering to let me pay for his slot on this show as an advertiser. It's my first advertising opportunity, and it's been a lot of fun so far.
Awesome. Good stuff. Well, we hope you can continue to come around. And I'm Joe Schmitz with Peak Retirement Planning. And if someone wants to reach out to us, they can just go to our website, peakretirementplanning.com. We also have some books on there that they can request. And I actually just wrote another book that got published on Thursday, and since Thursday it's actually become an Amazon bestseller, and it's called The Midwestern Millionaire. And so if someone wants to text this number, if you want to get your pen and paper out or pull out your phone, I'll give you the number to text to get a free copy, and we'll make sure we mail that out as soon as we haven't gotten copies yet, but they will be out here soon that we'll receive it and we'll send it out. But the book's all about those people who have been diligent savers all their life, and they've been hardworking, Midwestern values, family oriented, have done the right things, are better savers than spenders, and the book's just all about all the strategies they need to be aware of. And that's the type of client that we serve at Peak Retirement, so we wrote a book about them. So it's a lot of fun, and they can simply text FRUGAL. The word FRUGAL is all you got to text to 614-541-8713. Again, that's 614-541-8713. Just text the word FRUGAL there, and our team will send that out to you there. So I'll go ahead and close us out here, but fun time, gentlemen, today. That was a fun 2 hours, and it's always fun to have Mindy and Boots here, but I think we did a good job and add some excitement.